The decorated admiral circled her like a shark, his gold-braided uniform gleaming under fluorescent lights. His voice dripped with mockery as he addressed the plain-looking officer before him. "Commander," he repeated with theatrical disdain. "Of what exactly? The photocopy division?" The room filled with nervous laughter, junior officers eager to please. But something wasn't right. The woman's calm demeanor never wavered, even as the admiral's public humiliation intensified. She simply waited, watching him with patient eyes that had seen things these men couldn't imagine. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories about quiet power and unexpected moments of justice, consider subscribing for more. The briefing room of Naval Air Station North Island hummed with nervous energy as officers prepared for the quarterly inspection. Lieutenant Dario Esparza moved methodically between rows of chairs, adjusting each to perfect alignment with military precision. His dark eyes flicked repeatedly to the wall clock. 0700 hours. 90 minutes until Admiral Westbrook arrived. "Another quarter, another inspection," muttered Chief Petty Officer Lamson, helping arrange the presentation materials. Lieutenant Esparza straightened his already immaculate uniform. "The Admiral expects perfection. Remember last September? Lieutenant Commander Finch with the scuffed shoes?" Lamson winced. "Demoted on the spot, in front of everyone." "Exactly," Esparza said. "So check everything twice." A young ensign nearby visibly paled, glancing down at his shoes before frantically buffing them against the back of his trouser leg. The room gradually filled with officers of increasing rank, each contributing to the tension. Captains and commanders entered in small groups, speaking in low, measured tones about readiness metrics and strategic assessments. Junior officers kept to the perimeter, triple-checking their assigned tasks. In the far corner, almost invisible among the gathering crowd, stood a woman in a standard-issue naval uniform. Commander Nayara Okafor moved with quiet efficiency, occasionally consulting a thin file folder. Her uniform was perfectly regulation, but conspicuously unadorned compared to the others. No combat ribbons or special commendations brightened her chest, just the single gold oak leaf of a commander on her collar. Captain Devereux, a silver-haired veteran with 3 decades of service etched into his face, approached her. "Commander Okafor," he said, his voice respectfully low. The protocol officer asked if you'd prefer to be seated in the command section. She smiled politely but shook her head. "This is fine, Captain Devereux. Let's proceed as planned." He hesitated. "Ma'am, with all due respect, the Admiral can be somewhat traditional in his expectations. I'm aware of Admiral Westbrook's reputation." Her voice was measured, neither impressed nor concerned. "This arrangement serves our purpose better." Captain Devereux nodded, though his expression suggested disagreement. "As you wish, Commander." As he walked away, Devereux pulled his secure phone from his pocket and typed a brief message. Across the room, 2 senior officers checked their devices almost simultaneously, their eyes finding Commander Okafor before returning to their conversations. The clock reached 0730. Lieutenant Esparza clapped his hands sharply. "Places, everyone. The Admiral will arrive in 15 minutes. Final checks now." The room transformed into organized chaos as officers scrambled to their positions. Presentation slides received final review. Water glasses were filled, chairs aligned one last time. In the midst of this activity, Commander Okafor remained still, an island of calm. She observed the preparations with analytical eyes, occasionally making a brief note in her small leather notebook. Unlike the others, she showed no sign of anxiety about the impending inspection. At precisely 07:45, the double doors at the entrance swung open with dramatic force. Admiral James Westbrook strode in, a force of nature in pristine white. At 54, his face was weathered but commanding, steel-gray hair cropped ruthlessly short. 3 rows of colorful ribbons adorned his chest, topped by the gold trident of a Navy SEAL. "Attention on deck!" The call rang through the room. Every person snapped to rigid attention, spines straight, eyes forward. The rustle of movement ceased instantly. Admiral Westbrook paused just inside the doorway, surveying his domain with practiced authority. His aide, Commander Voss, stood 2 paces behind, clipboard in hand. 4 more officers followed, forming the Admiral's customary entourage. "At ease," the Admiral finally said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the room. The assembled officers relaxed marginally, shifting to parade rest. "Looks like you're all prepared for me today," Westbrook observed, striding forward. "Let's hope that preparation extends beyond the furniture arrangement." The remark earned a dutiful ripple of laughter. The formal portion of the inspection began with a presentation on readiness metrics. Commander Jansen, the base operations officer, led the briefing with mechanical efficiency, cycling through slides filled with statistics and status reports. Admiral Westbrook occasionally interrupted with pointed questions that sent junior officers scrambling for supporting documentation. "These missile system maintenance schedules," Westbrook said, gesturing toward the screen. "They show a 14% increase in downtime over last quarter. Explain." Commander Jansen swallowed visibly. "Sir, we've had supply chain issues with the specialized components. The procurement department has files requisitions through 3 separate channels to resolve the delays." "Procurement isn't your responsibility, Commander." The Admiral's tone suggested this was precisely Jansen's responsibility. "Yes, sir. I've personally followed up weekly and implemented a workaround using calibrated substitute parts where safety parameters allow." The Admiral nodded, marginally appeased. This pattern repeated throughout the presentation. Westbrook identifying weaknesses, officers explaining contingencies, the Admiral grudgingly accepting their solutions while making clear they should have done better. From her position near the back, Commander Okafor observed the interaction. While others scribbled notes frantically, she remained still, watching the Admiral's technique. Once, when Westbrook made a particularly cutting remark about coastal defense protocols, the corner of her mouth twitched almost imperceptibly. By the RO 810, the formal presentation concluded. Admiral Westbrook rose from his seat, rolling his shoulders as if shedding the tedium. "Well, that was thorough," he said, his tight smile never reaching his eyes. Dutiful chuckles rippled through the room. "Now," he continued, "perhaps we can get to the real assessment. In my experience, you learn more in 5 minutes of conversation than 20 slides of statistics." The atmosphere shifted as Westbrook began working the room. With senior officers, he was collegial, exchanging familiar handshakes and inside references to past deployments. With mid-level officers, he was probing, asking unexpected technical questions that tested their knowledge. With juniors, he was intimidating, finding minor uniform infractions or posture issues to critique. Each interaction reinforced the Admiral's position at the top of the hierarchy. Each conversation demonstrated his mastery of the complex world these officers inhabited. Each exchange left the recipient feeling thoroughly inspected. "Captain Harris," Westbrook called, spotting a familiar face. "How's that new sonar system integration coming along? Still fighting with the contractor?" Harris brightened. "We finally got them to admit the interface specs were inadequate, sir. Revised contract is saving us 8 weeks of troubleshooting." "Good man. Knew you'd sort them out." The Admiral continued his circuit of the room, trailing his entourage like the tail of a comet. Junior officers braced visibly as he approached, relaxing only after he passed. Eventually, his path brought him to the back corner. For the first time, Admiral Westbrook noticed Commander Okafor, standing quietly with her slim folder of notes. Something about her composure caught his attention. Not nervous, not eager for approval, simply observant. "And you are?" he asked, eyebrows raised expectantly. She met his gaze directly. "Commander Nyara Okafor, sir." Westbrook made a show of looking her up and down, noting the absence of decoration on her uniform. His eyes lingered deliberately on her commander's oak leaf insignia. "Commander," he repeated, infusing the word with theatrical skepticism. "Of what exactly? The photocopy division?" Laughter erupted around them, louder than the polite chuckles his previous remarks had earned. Junior officers sensed an opportunity to curry favor through appreciation of the Admiral's wit. Commander Okafor's expression remained unchanged. "I'm assigned to Pacific Fleet Command, sir." "That's quite vague, Commander." Westbrook began circling her, his manner reminiscent of a shark assessing prey. "In my day, commanders actually commanded something. Ships, aircraft, SEAL teams." He gestured to his own insignia. "What exactly do you command?" The room's temperature seemed to rise. Some officers shifted uncomfortably while others smirked, enjoying the spectacle of the Admiral putting someone in their place. "I'm recently returned from an extended assignment, sir," she replied evenly. "Ah, An extended assignment, Westbrook mimicked, making air quotes with his fingers. How mysterious. Perhaps you'd care to enlighten us about your expertise. Commander Okafor remained silent, neither defensive nor confrontational. Her calm demeanor seemed only to intensify the Admiral's focus on her. Lieutenant Esparza, standing near the Admiral's elbow, noticed something odd. Captain Devereaux was watching the interaction with growing alarm. The older officer had moved to a computer terminal and was typing rapidly, his expression increasingly concerned. "Sir," Esparza whispered, touching the Admiral's sleeve lightly. "Perhaps we should continue with the inspection schedule. The weapon systems demonstration is prepared." "In a minute, Lieutenant," Westbrook dismissed him with a wave. "I'm conducting an inspection right now, leadership assessment." He turned back to Okafor. "You see, Commander, in the real Navy, rank comes with responsibilities, authority, command presence." He gestured broadly to the room. "These officers respect rank because they understand the weight behind it, the experience it represents." The Admiral leaned closer. "So tell us, Commander, what's your actual rank in the real Navy?" As the question hung in the air, something unexpected happened. At the back of the room, 3 senior officers received simultaneous alerts on their secure devices. One choked on his water. Another's eyes widened almost comically. The third looked from his screen to Commander Okafor with an expression of dawning recognition. Lieutenant Esparza noticed these reactions with growing unease. He glanced at Captain Devereaux, who was now staring at his computer screen with a stunned expression. "Sir," Esparza tried again, more urgently. "Not now, Lieutenant," the Admiral snapped, his focus entirely on Commander Okafor, waiting for her response. The tension in the room shifted imperceptibly. Officers with higher security clearances began exchanging significant glances. A whisper started near the terminal, where Captain Devereaux stood, gradually moving forward through the assembled officers. Westbrook, intent on his target, remained oblivious to the changing atmosphere. "Nothing to say, Commander? I'm sure we'd all benefit from your vast experience." Before Commander Okafor could respond, the base communication system chimed with the distinctive tone of a priority message. "Admiral Westbrook, secure call from Commander, Pacific Fleet Online 1, Priority Alpha." The Admiral frowned, confused by both the interruption and the priority level. He looked at his aide. "Commander Voss, take a message. I'm in the middle of an inspection." Commander Voss stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Sir, it's flagged Alpha Priority. Protocol requires immediate response." Westbrook's expression darkened, but decades of naval discipline prevailed. "Continue the inspection," he ordered. "I'll return shortly." With a final pointed look at Commander Okafor, he strode from the room, his entourage trailing behind. As soon as the door closed, the room erupted into whispered conversations. Lieutenant Esparza approached Captain Devereaux, who remained at the computer terminal. "Sir, what's happening? Who is she?" Devereaux looked up, his face pale. "Did you run the standard command verification protocol before the Admiral arrived?" "Of course, sir. All attending officers were verified against the base registry." "Base registry," Devereaux repeated flatly. "Did you check Joint Command authorization?" Esparza's stomach dropped. That's above my clearance level, sir." "Exactly?" Devereaux turned the screen slightly, showing a classified personnel file with multiple security watermarks. Esparza caught a glimpse of Commander Okafor's photo beside a redacted service record. Across the room, groups of officers had formed concentric circles of information sharing. Those with higher clearance levels whispered to their colleagues, who reacted with various degrees of surprise and disbelief. Esparza caught fragments of conversation. "Operation Obsidian Shield. Thought that was a JSOC operation. The Taiwanese freighter incident. Thought she was still deployed in the South China Sea." Commander Okafor herself remained where the Admiral had left her, consulting her watch with mild interest. When 3 senior officers approached her, she nodded in brief acknowledgement of whatever they said. Suddenly, the door burst open. Admiral Westbrook returned, his face ashen. All theatrical confidence drained away. He scanned the assembled officers until he located Commander Okafor near the back wall. The room fell silent as he approached her, his swagger replaced by a rigid formality that seemed foreign to his frame. "Commander," he began, then corrected himself. I believe I owe you the courtesy of a proper address." She met his gaze evenly, her expression neither triumphant nor resentful. "Perhaps," he continued with forced casualness, "you could clarify your current position for the record." The entire room held its breath, waiting. If you've ever witnessed someone quietly commanding respect without demanding it, share your story in the comments. What moments have you seen where quiet authority spoke louder than any show of force? Subscribe for part 2 of this naval drama coming tomorrow. Commander Nyara Okafor regarded Admiral Westbrook with calm eyes that had seen things few in the room could imagine. The silence stretched between them, a palpable thing that seemed to have weight and substance. Officers throughout the room leaned forward imperceptibly, waiting. "Fleet Commander, Pacific Special Operations," she stated simply. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Even those who had suspected something still looked stunned at the confirmation. Several officers unconsciously straightened their posture. Admiral Westbrook's face drained of color. The title she'd just spoken outranked him by multiple levels, a position he had aspired to but never achieved. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "That is," he began, then swallowed. "That position was decommissioned after the Pacific realignment. Reconstituted under Classified Directive 47 Alpha last month," supplied Captain Devereaux from nearby, "following the success of Operation Obsidian Shield." Recognition dawned on several faces around the room. Operation Obsidian Shield, the covert extraction of 3 nuclear scientists and their families from a hostile state, preventing a catastrophic security breach. The operation had been executed flawlessly, with 0 casualties reported, but the commander's identity had remained classified until now. Admiral Westbrook's hand trembled slightly as he slowly, deliberately removed his cover. His theatrical confidence had vanished, replaced by the rigid protocol drilled into every naval officer from their first day at the academy. "Fleet Commander," he acknowledged, executing a perfect formal salute. Throughout the room, officers rose to attention. Salutes snapped upward in unison, a forest of hands rising in belated recognition. Commander Okafor, Fleet Commander Okafor, returned the salute with simple dignity. "At ease," she said, her voice carrying naturally now, no longer intentionally subdued. "Please, continue with the inspection as scheduled." For a moment no one moved, the room caught between protocols. Admiral Westbrook cleared his throat, struggling to reassume command of a situation that had slipped entirely from his grasp. "You heard the commander," he managed. "Continue with the inspection schedule. Lieutenant Esparza, the weapon systems demonstration." Esparza jumped slightly, jarred from his stunned immobility. "Yes, sir. Right away, sir." As officers began moving toward their stations, reorganizing around this seismic shift in the command structure, Fleet Commander Okafor approached Admiral Westbrook. "Admiral, if I may," she said, her voice pitched for his ears alone. "I believe efficiency would be best served if we continue jointly." Westbrook nodded stiffly. "Of course, Commander. I would appreciate your insights." Together, they moved toward the tactical display, where the weapons officer waited nervously. The rest of the inspection took on a surreal quality as the 2 senior officers, so recently in conflict, now conducted a professional assessment side by side. Where Admiral Westbrook had been theatrical and intimidating, Fleet Commander Okafor was precise and analytical. Her questions cut straight to operational weaknesses that others had carefully obscured in their presentations. Junior officers who had been smirking during the Admiral's earlier performance now stood rigid under her measured examination. "Your coastal defense protocols show a vulnerability in Sector 4, she observed, indicating a point on the tactical display. "What countermeasures have been implemented?" The weapons officer blinked rapidly. "We've increased patrol frequency and added surveillance drones, Commander." "And the blind spot created by the cliffside topography?" The officer hesitated. This specific weakness had not appeared in any of their assessments. "I'm not familiar with any blind spot in that sector, Commander." Fleet Commander Okafor nodded, unsurprised. "Make a note to review the topographical interference patterns. The cliff face creates a sonar shadow approximately 2 nautical miles wide. It's been successfully exploited twice in Red Team exercises." Admiral Westbrook watched this exchange with a mixture of professional appreciation and personal discomfort. The competence he'd questioned so publicly was now on full display, revealing gaps in his own understanding of the base's vulnerabilities. As they moved from station to station, a new dynamic established itself. Officers addressed their remarks to both commanders, but increasingly directed technical questions toward Okafor. Her knowledge of operations, vulnerabilities, and strategic priorities was comprehensive, revealing an understanding that could only come from the highest levels of command intelligence. In the communications center, she paused before a secure terminal displaying encryption protocols. "You're still using the Theta-7 algorithm for routine communications," she noted. The communications officer nodded. "Yes, Commander. It's the standard protocol for this classification level." "Upgrade to Omega-3 within 72 hours, she instructed. "The Theta series has shown vulnerabilities in recent penetration testing." The officer glanced at Admiral Westbrook, who nodded confirmation, though his expression suggested this was news to him as well. By midday, they had completed the operational portion of the inspection. The group relocated to the officers' mess for a working lunch, where the tension had transformed into a different kind of energy. Junior officers kept a respectful distance from the commander's table, but their attention remained fixed on the quiet woman who had so dramatically altered the day's dynamics. At the senior table, conversation flowed with careful professional courtesy. Admiral Westbrook had recovered some of his composure, though his usual dominance of the conversation was notably absent. "The readiness reports are generally positive," he observed, addressing Fleet Commander Okafor, "though your insights have identified several areas requiring immediate attention." "Overall operational readiness is satisfactory," she agreed. "The base has maintained high standards under your supervision, Admiral." The acknowledgement seemed to ease some of the tension in Westbrook's shoulders. "Your assessment of our coastal vulnerabilities was particularly valuable. I'd be interested to know how you became familiar with those specific topographical features." A subtle shift occurred in Okafor's expression, something only noticeable to those watching closely. "I made use of them myself, 6 years ago. Operation Distant Harbor." Several senior officers at the table exchanged glances. Operation Distant Harbor was classified at levels beyond even their access, but the name itself carried weight in certain naval circles, mentioned in hushed tones alongside legendary covert actions. Admiral Westbrook's eyebrows rose. "That was your operation?" "One of several in that region," she replied without elaboration. The conversation paused as a junior officer approached the table. "Excuse me, Commander, Admiral," he said, extending a secure tablet. "Priority message from Joint Forces Command." Fleet Commander Okafor accepted the tablet, reading the message with practiced efficiency. Nothing in her expression revealed the content, but when she finished, she checked her watch with new purpose. "Admiral, I apologize, but I'll need to cut my participation in this inspection short. I'm required elsewhere." Westbrook nodded. "Of course, Commander. Duty calls." She rose from the table, and everyone else stood in response, naval protocol asserting itself automatically. "Lieutenant Esparza will ensure any transportation requirements are met," the Admiral continued, "and I'd be grateful for a full assessment report when your schedule permits." "You'll have it by ZO-800 tomorrow," she assured him. "There's one more thing, Admiral, if I might impose." "Anything, Commander." Fleet Commander Okafor surveyed the room briefly. "I'd appreciate a few minutes with your junior officers, alone." The request hung in the air, unconventional but not inappropriate given her rank. Admiral Westbrook hesitated only a moment. "Of course. Senior staff, let's give the commander some space with the junior officers." As the senior officers filed out, the atmosphere in the room transformed again. Junior officers remained standing, uncertain of protocol in this unusual situation. Fleet Commander Okafor waited until the door closed behind Admiral Westbrook. "Please, be seated," she said, her tone more conversational than commanding. The young officers sat, eyes fixed on her with undisguised curiosity. Lieutenant Esparza found himself at the closest table, suddenly the unofficial spokesman for the group. "How can we assist you, Commander?" he asked. She considered the room full of expectant faces. "I wanted to speak with you directly, without the filter of rank and protocol that necessarily exists when your commanding officers are present." She moved among the tables, her manner relaxed but purposeful. "Most of you witnessed what happened this morning. An assumption was made about my capabilities based on appearance, lack of visible decorations, and perhaps other factors." No one spoke, but several officers nodded slightly. "I'm not here to criticize Admiral Westbrook," He's an accomplished officer with an exemplary record, but I am here to offer a perspective that might serve you well in your careers." She paused near Esparza's table. The most effective power rarely announces itself. The most crucial work often happens without recognition or public acknowledgement, and leadership is measured not by the volume of one's voice, but by the impact of one's decisions. The silence in the room was complete, every officer absorbing her words. "Many of you laughed this morning when the Admiral questioned my rank and role," she continued without accusation. "It was a natural response in that context. But I want you to consider what assumptions guided that laughter, and how those assumptions might limit your effectiveness as officers and leaders." She made eye contact with several officers who had been most vocal in their amusement earlier. They looked away, discomfort evident in their postures. The nature of modern naval operations increasingly requires capabilities that don't fit traditional metrics. Some of the most consequential work happens in the shadows, by officers who may never wear their accomplishments on their uniforms. Fleet Commander Okafor checked her watch again. "I have a transport waiting, so I'll leave you with this thought. Judge capability by results, not appearances. The most dangerous phrase in military thinking is, 'We've always done it this way.' And sometimes, the most valuable officer in the room is the one no one notices." With a brief nod that somehow conveyed both authority and respect, she turned and walked from the room, leaving behind a thoughtful silence. Lieutenant Esparza found himself assigned to escort the fleet commander to her transport. They walked through the base corridors, her measured pace unhurried despite the priority message she'd received. "The Admiral is well respected," she commented as they walked. "His operational experience is extensive." Esparza nodded. "Yes, Commander. He's been a mentor to many of us." "That's valuable. Experience should be shared." She glanced at him. "What's your assessment of this morning's events, Lieutenant?" The question caught him off guard. Junior officers weren't typically asked for their opinions of flag officer interactions. "I'm not sure it's my place to assess, Commander." "Consider it a professional development exercise," she suggested. "Analysis of command dynamics is an essential skill for advancement." Esparza measured his words carefully. The Admiral operated with incomplete information, which led to an incorrect assessment of the situation. When new information became available, he adjusted accordingly. "A diplomatic analysis," she noted with the hint of a smile. "Now, try again, without concern for protocol." He hesitated, then decided that honesty was the safer course with someone of her rank and insight. The Admiral made assumptions based on superficial factors and used his position to reinforce those assumptions publicly. When those assumptions proved incorrect, it undermined his command authority. Fleet Commander Okafor nodded, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. And what lessons might be drawn from that observation? That effective leadership requires accurate assessment before action, and that assumptions can be operational vulnerabilities. "Well analyzed, Lieutenant." They had reached the transport area, where a nondescript black sedan waited, driver standing at attention beside it. "I suspect you'll make Commander ahead of schedule." The comment, delivered casually, but with evident sincerity, caught Esparza by surprise. "Thank you, Commander." As the driver opened the rear door, Fleet Commander Okafor paused. "One more thing, Lieutenant. The Admiral will receive my full assessment report in the morning, but there's a matter that shouldn't wait. The communications encryption issue I mentioned earlier is more urgent than I indicated in the briefing. The Theta-7 algorithm has a critical vulnerability that was identified 36 hours ago." Esparza straightened. "I'll ensure the communications officer receives the update immediately, Commander." "Good. The full technical specifications are being transmitted to his secure terminal now." She handed him a small data card. "This contains the authorization codes he'll need to implement the upgrade." With a final nod, she entered the vehicle, which pulled away smoothly, leaving Esparza with a new sense of purpose and more than a few questions. When he returned to the main building, he found the atmosphere had shifted yet again. Senior officers huddled in small groups, speaking in low, urgent tones. Admiral Westbrook was nowhere to be seen. Esparza approached Captain Devereaux, who stood reviewing something on a secure tablet. "Sir, where is Admiral Westbrook?" "Secure call with Pacific Command," Devereaux replied without looking up. "Been in there 20 minutes already. I have urgent security information from Fleet Commander Okafor regarding the communications encryption protocols." That got Devereaux's attention. He looked up sharply. What did she say? The Theta 7 algorithm has a critical vulnerability identified within the last 36 hours. She's authorized an immediate upgrade to Omega-3 and provided the necessary access codes. Esparza held up the data card. Devereaux's expression tightened. Get that to communications immediately. Priority implementation. Yes, sir. Esparza turned to go, then paused. Sir, may I ask a question? Quickly, Lieutenant. Fleet Commander Okafor, her position, it's new, isn't it? I've never heard of Pacific Special Operations having a fleet commander. Devereaux regarded him with an unreadable expression. The position exists as needed, Lieutenant. It's activated under specific circumstances for specific individuals with specific capabilities. Beyond that, you don't have the clearance for details. Understood, sir. But Operation Obsidian Shield, that was her? Lieutenant, Devereaux said with careful precision, what you heard in that room today exists in a classification category beyond your access level. I would strongly advise focusing on your encryption update mission rather than pursuing information that could complicate your career. The warning was clear. Esparza nodded and hurried toward the communications center. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of activity. The encryption update took priority, with communications officers working frantically to implement the new protocols across all systems. Admiral Westbrook emerged from his secure call looking grim, issuing orders for an unscheduled readiness drill that sent the entire base into controlled chaos. By evening, Esparza found himself back in the original briefing room, now transformed into an impromptu command center. Status boards showed the progress of the encryption update alongside the readiness drill results. Admiral Westbrook stood at the center, once again in command of his domain, but with a subtle difference in his bearing that only those who knew him well might notice. Communications update status, he demanded. The communications officer stepped forward. 87% complete, Admiral. All critical systems have been migrated to Omega-3. Remaining secondary systems will be upgraded by 2200 hours. Readiness drill results? Response time averaged 4 minutes, 12 seconds. That's an improvement of 27 seconds over last quarter's drill. Admiral Westbrook nodded, his expression satisfied, but subdued compared to his usual theatrical approval. Acceptable. Prepare a full report for tomorrow's briefing. Dismissed. As officers filed out, the Admiral's eyes found Esparza. Lieutenant? A moment. Esparza approached, standing at attention. Sir? Westbrook waited until they were alone in the room. You escorted Fleet Commander Okafor to her transport. Yes, sir. What was your impression? The question echoed Okafor's earlier inquiry so precisely that Esparza wondered if some coordination had occurred between them. Sir? Your impression, Lieutenant, of the commander. Speak freely. Esparza considered his words carefully. She was precise, sir. Authoritative without being authoritarian. Her knowledge of our operational capabilities and vulnerabilities exceeded our briefing materials. She mentioned Operation Distant Harbor to you. Only in passing, sir. She indicated familiarity with the coastal topography from a previous operation. Admiral Westbrook nodded slowly. Lieutenant, are you familiar with the concept of a quiet professional? Yes, sir. Someone who accomplishes the mission without seeking recognition. Fleet Commander Okafor embodies that concept at the highest level, Westbrook said, his voice uncharacteristically reflective. Her record, what little of it isn't classified beyond even my access, contains achievements that would fill 3 normal careers. He moved to the window, looking out at the base lights coming on as evening settled. The operation she referenced, Distant Harbor, prevented a crisis that would have cost thousands of lives. No one outside a very small circle knows it happened at all. No medals were awarded. No commendations entered into personnel files. Esparza remained silent, recognizing that the Admiral was processing something personal as much as providing information. I've spent my career ensuring my accomplishments were recognized, Westbrook continued, making sure the right people knew my name, building a reputation that commanded respect. He turned back from the window. Commander Okafor has spent hers ensuring no one knew what she'd done, operating in environments where discovery meant failure, leading teams whose very existence is classified. She seems very effective, sir? She is the most effective naval officer I've encountered in 30 years of service, Westbrook said flatly, and I treated her like an administrative oversight. The Admiral straightened his already impeccable uniform. "The commander's assessment report will arrive at 0800 tomorrow. I want you to review it personally and ensure that every recommendation is implemented immediately. Priority allocation of resources. No bureaucratic delays." "Yes, sir." "And, Lieutenant?" "Sir?" "Today was a lesson in leadership that they don't teach at the academy. Make sure you absorb it fully." "Already working on that, sir." After leaving the Admiral, Esparza headed toward his quarters, mind still processing the day's extraordinary events. As he crossed the quad, he noticed unusual activity around the secure communications building. Additional security personnel had been posted, and several non-uniformed individuals with intelligence community credentials were entering the facility. A junior officer hurried past, looking harried. "Walker?" Esparza called. "What's happening?" The ensign paused briefly. "Flash traffic coming in from Indopacom. Something big developing in the South China Sea. All leaves canceled for communications and intelligence personnel. Related to our encryption update?" "Don't know, sir. But the timing seems connected. Word is Fleet Commander Okafor requested direct feeds from 3 surveillance satellites redirected to her command post." Before Esparza could ask another question, the base alert system activated with a short, distinctive tone, followed by, "Attention all personnel. Security level Bravo is now in effect. Repeat, security. Level Bravo is now in effect." Across the base, additional security measures sprang into action. Armed patrols doubled, ID checks intensified, and all non-essential personnel were directed to quarters. Esparza's secure phone vibrated. The message was brief. "Report to Command Center. Priority Alpha." The command center hummed with focused activity when he arrived. Senior officers clustered around tactical displays, showing maritime traffic patterns in the South China Sea. Admiral Westbrook stood at the center, issuing directions to communications officers. "Lieutenant Esparza, join us," the Admiral called. Esparza approached the main display, where satellite imagery showed a civilian container vessel surrounded by smaller craft of unidentified origin. "Taiwanese flagged merchant vessel Prosperity Star," Admiral Westbrook explained. "Currently being interdicted by unmarked vessels in international waters. 17 crew members, plus 4 passengers not on the manifest." "Scientists," added Captain Devereaux from nearby. "High-value assets according to intelligence." Westbrook nodded. "The situation has escalated to potential hostage scenario. Pacific Command is coordinating response options." "Sir?" Esparza asked. "Our role?" "Support and readiness," the Admiral replied. "Fleet Commander Okafor has taken operational command of the response from her mobile command center. We're providing communication support and standing by for potential medical evacuation of recovered personnel." The mention of Okafor's name in connection with the developing crisis created an electric current through the room. Officers exchanged significant glances, connecting the encryption urgency with this sudden operation. A communications officer called out, "Admiral, secure transmission from Fleet Commander Okafor's command post." "Put it through," Westbrook ordered. The main screen shifted to show a secure video feed. Fleet Commander Okafor appeared, now dressed in tactical operations gear, her earlier unadorned uniform replaced by equipment that marked her as an active field commander. Behind her, specialists worked at various stations in what appeared to be a mobile command center. "Admiral Westbrook," she acknowledged with a nod. "We have a developing situation that may require your base's support capabilities. We're aware of the Prosperity Star situation, Commander. All resources are at your disposal." "Thank you, Admiral. We've identified the interdicting vessels as belonging to a non-state actor group, operating with sophisticated equipment. They've made no demands yet, but our intelligence suggests they're specifically targeting the unregistered passengers." "The scientists?" Westbrook confirmed. "Correct. Their expertise in advanced sonar technology makes them high-value targets." She glanced off-screen briefly. "We're implementing response option Charlie 3. 2 extraction teams are already en route. Your base should prepare for potential casualty reception within the next 4 to 6 hours." "Understood, Commander. We'll be ready." "One more thing, Admiral," Okafor continued, her voice taking on a different quality. "The encryption upgrade you implemented today was critical to this operation. The previous algorithm had been compromised, which is how these actors knew the scientists' transport details." A ripple of understanding moved through the command center. The urgency of the encryption change, the coincidental timing of Fleet Commander Okafor's inspection visit, all suddenly part of a larger operational picture. I recommended the inspection of your base specifically because we needed to implement that security update without alerting potential intelligence leaks within the broader command structure, she explained. Your cooperation has been instrumental in protecting this operation. Admiral Westbrook stood slightly taller. Happy to be of service, Commander. We'll monitor your frequency for updates. Thank you, Admiral. Okafor out. The screen returned to the tactical display of the Prosperity Star. For a moment, no one spoke, each officer processing the implications of what they'd just learned. The morning's inspection, which had seemed a routine bureaucratic exercise, had been part of a covert counterintelligence operation, with Fleet Commander Okafor using her position to implement critical security measures without alerting potential adversaries. Admiral Westbrook turned to the assembled officers. You heard the commander. Prepare for potential casualty reception. Medical teams on standby. Security at maximum alert. Let's move. As the command center erupted into focused activity, Esparza found himself stationed at the communications console, monitoring transmissions from the response teams now closing in on the Prosperity Star. The operation unfolded with precision that spoke of extensive planning and flawless execution. At 02:30 hours, the first report came in. Extraction teams have secured the vessel, hostiles neutralized. 4 scientists and 14 crew recovered safely. 3 crew members wounded, non-critical. Extraction proceeding to rendezvous point Alpha. Relief spread through the command center. Admiral Westbrook, who had remained on station throughout the night, allowed himself a small smile. Well done, he murmured, though whether to the distant extraction teams or to Fleet Commander Okafor was unclear. As dawn approached, medical teams stood ready on the landing pad as helicopters appeared on the horizon. The wounded crew members were transferred to medical care with efficient precision. Among the last to disembark from the final helicopter was Fleet Commander Okafor herself, looking remarkably composed despite having orchestrated a complex extraction operation through the night. Admiral Westbrook waited at the edge of the landing pad. As Okafor approached, he saluted with genuine respect, no trace of his earlier theatrical performance. Commander, he acknowledged, successful operation. Thanks to your base's support, Admiral, she replied, returning the salute. The scientists are secure, and the intelligence leak has been contained. They walked together toward the command building, their earlier antagonism replaced by professional camaraderie forged in operational success. I owe you an apology for yesterday morning, Westbrook said quietly. No, she replied. You responded to incomplete information. That's not a failure of leadership, merely a reality of our profession. Still, my approach was unnecessarily theatrical. Fleet Commander Okafor smiled slightly. We all have our leadership styles, Admiral. Yours has been effective throughout your distinguished career. They paused at the entrance to the building. The rising sun cast long shadows across the base. A new day beginning after a night of unseen heroism that would never appear in any public record. There is, perhaps, a lesson for both of us in yesterday's events, she suggested, about appearances, assumptions, and the many forms effective leadership can take. Admiral Westbrook nodded thoughtfully. A lesson I won't soon forget, Commander. Have you ever misjudged someone only to discover they were far more capable than you initially assumed? Or been in a situation where your own abilities were underestimated? Share your story in the comments. Subscribe for the final part of this naval drama tomorrow, where we'll see the lasting impact of this encounter on the entire command. 3 weeks after the Prosperity Star incident, Naval Air Station North Island had settled back into its routine operations. The heightened security measures had been scaled back. The visiting intelligence personnel had departed, and the base had returned to its normal rhythm. But subtle changes lingered beneath the surface, visible only to those who knew where to look. Lieutenant Dario Esparza noticed these changes as he prepared the briefing room for another inspection. The room was the same, the chairs still arranged in perfect rows, the presentation materials still meticulously organized. But the atmosphere was different. Junior officers moved with purpose rather than anxiety. The obsessive attention to appearance had been replaced by genuine focus on operational readiness. Lieutenant, called Chief Petty Officer Lamson from across the room. The communication security update is complete, all systems verified and authenticated. Esparza nodded. Excellent. Added to the briefing package. A young ensign approached, her uniform impeccable, but her manner confident rather than nervous. Sir, the readiness drill metrics are included in Section 4. Response times have improved 15% since last month. Thank you, Ensign Mercer. Well done. The door opened and Admiral Westbrook entered. Unlike his theatrical entrance 3 weeks earlier, he walked in without ceremony, nodding to the officers who acknowledged his arrival. "Morning, Lieutenant," he said to Esparza. "Are we prepared for Rear Admiral Collins?" "Yes, sir. All briefing materials are ready and department heads are standing by." Westbrook surveyed the room with a critical eye that had lost none of its sharpness, but the performative quality that had once characterized his inspections was noticeably absent. "Good," he said. "This inspection is important. Rear Admiral Collins reports directly to Pacific Command. His assessment will influence resource allocations for the coming fiscal year." "Understood, sir." The Admiral's gaze lingered on the spot near the back of the room, where Fleet Commander Okafor had stood during that transformative morning. "Any word from Fleet Commander Okafor's office about the follow-up assessment she mentioned?" "Nothing specific, sir. Her aide indicated she's currently deployed on an operational matter." Westbrook nodded, unsurprised. "Very well. We'll proceed with today's inspection as planned." Officers continued to arrive, filling the room with the quiet hum of professional conversation. Unlike the tense silence that had preceded previous inspections, this gathering had the atmosphere of purposeful collaboration. Junior officers spoke directly to their superiors about operational matters, offering suggestions and raising concerns without hesitation. Captain Devereaux entered, moving directly to Admiral Westbrook. "Sir, Rear Admiral Collins' transport has landed. ETA to the briefing room is 7 minutes." "Thank you, Captain. We're ready." Westbrook turned to address the room. "Everyone, listen up. Rear Admiral Collins is here to assess our operational readiness, not our ability to polish brass or align chairs. Focus on substance, not appearance. I want honest assessments of both capabilities and limitations. If we have weaknesses, acknowledge them and present solutions." "Understood?" "Yes, sir," came the unified response. Esparza noted how the Admiral's approach had changed since the encounter with Fleet Commander Okafor. Gone was the theatrical intimidation, replaced by straightforward expectations and clear guidance. The impact on morale and effectiveness had been immediate and sustained. At precisely 0900 hours, Rear Admiral Collins entered the briefing room. A tall, austere man with a reputation for rigor, Collins moved with the contained energy of someone who valued efficiency above all else. "Admiral Westbrook," he said, extending his hand, "good to see you again." "Admiral Collins, welcome to North Island. We're prepared for your inspection." Collins nodded, glancing around the room. "I understand you've implemented significant operational changes since the Prosperity Star incident. I'm interested in seeing those firsthand." "We'd be happy to demonstrate, sir. Lieutenant Esparza will guide you through our updated protocols and security measures." The inspection proceeded with professional focus. Department heads presented their readiness assessments without embellishment or evasion, acknowledging challenges alongside achievements. Rear Admiral Collins asked pointed questions, diving deep into operational details rather than superficial metrics. In the communications center, he paused before the same terminal where Fleet Commander Okafor had noted the encryption vulnerability. "The Omega-3 upgrade was implemented base-wide?" he asked the communications officer. "Yes, sir. Completed within 12 hours of the initial directive. All systems are now operating with enhanced security protocols." Collins nodded approvingly. "Impressive response time. Most installations took 3 to 5 days for full implementation." "We had strong motivation, sir," Admiral Westbrook said. Fleet Commander Okafor made the urgency quite clear. At the mention of Okafor's name, Collins gave Westbrook a measuring look. "Yes, I imagine she did. Her operational assessments tend to generate immediate action." The inspection continued through the morning, covering every aspect of the base's operations. By noon, Rear Admiral Collins had seen enough to form his preliminary assessment. The senior officers gathered in Admiral Westbrook's conference room for his feedback. "Overall, I'm impressed," Collins began. "The operational improvements you've implemented since my last visit are substantial. Response times, security protocols, interdepartmental communication, all showing marked enhancement." "Thank you, sir," Westbrook replied. "The credit goes to the officers and personnel who've embraced these changes." Perhaps, Collins said with a slight smile, but changes of this magnitude typically require clear direction from the top. Your leadership approach seems to have evolved, Admiral. Westbrook met his gaze directly. Recent events provided valuable perspective, sir. Sometimes we need to be reminded of the difference between command presence and effective leadership. Collins nodded, understanding more than Westbrook had explicitly stated. Fleet Commander Okafor has that effect on many who encounter her. Speaking of which, he checked his watch. I believe we have one more item on today's agenda. Before Westbrook could respond, Captain Devereaux entered the conference room. Sir, Fleet Commander Okafor has arrived. She's in the main briefing room. Admiral Westbrook straightened slightly. I wasn't aware the commander would be joining us today. A last-minute addition to her itinerary, apparently, Collins said, rising from his seat. Shall we? They made their way to the briefing room where Fleet Commander Okafor stood conversing with several officers. Unlike their first encounter, she now wore a uniform that properly reflected her rank and authority, though still modest compared to many flag officers of equivalent standing. The officers around her listened with focused attention to whatever she was explaining. When Admiral Westbrook entered with Rear Admiral Collins, the room came to attention. At ease, Collins said. Please continue, Commander. Okafor nodded. Admiral Westbrook, Admiral Collins, I hope I'm not disrupting your inspection schedule. Not at all, Commander, Westbrook assured her. We've just concluded the formal assessment. Your timing is excellent. Good. I'm here to provide a follow-up on the operational changes implemented after my previous visit, and to deliver something in person. She turned to address the assembled officers. 3 weeks ago, this base played a critical role in the extraction of 4 scientists and 17 crew members from the Prosperity Star. Your rapid implementation of enhanced security protocols prevented a potential intelligence catastrophe and directly contributed to the operation's success. The officers listened with rapt attention. For many, this was the first official acknowledgement of their role in the classified operation. What many of you don't know, Okafor continued, is that the Prosperity Star incident was merely one component of a larger counterintelligence operation. The scientists extracted from that vessel have since provided critical information that has neutralized a sophisticated espionage network operating throughout the Pacific region. She nodded to an aide, who distributed sealed folders to Admiral Westbrook, Rear Admiral Collins, and several senior officers. These documents contain the declassified portions of the operation summary. The full impact of your contributions can now be properly acknowledged, though many details must remain classified. Fleet Commander Okafor turned specifically to Admiral Westbrook. Admiral, your base's performance during this operation has been recognized at the highest levels of command. The Chief of Naval Operations has authorized me to present this commendation to you and your personnel. She handed him an official document bearing the CNO's seal. Admiral Westbrook accepted it with genuine surprise. Thank you, Commander. This is unexpected. Well deserved, she replied. Your ability to adapt quickly to changing operational requirements was exemplary. Particularly noteworthy was your willingness to set aside traditional approaches in favor of more effective methods. The subtle reference to his own transformation was not lost on Westbrook or the officers who had witnessed his interaction with Okafor 3 weeks earlier. Leadership sometimes requires us to recognize when our established patterns no longer serve the mission, he acknowledged. Your visit provided that opportunity. Fleet Commander Okafor smiled slightly. Mutual learning is the hallmark of an effective command structure, Admiral. She addressed the broader group again. I've reviewed the operational improvements implemented since my last visit. The results are impressive. Response times have improved, security protocols have been enhanced, and interdepartmental communication shows marked efficiency gains. Rear Admiral Collins nodded in agreement. My assessment reached similar conclusions, Commander. Admiral Westbrook has implemented substantial improvements across all operational areas. Not surprising, Okafor said. The Admiral's record speaks for itself. 30 years of distinguished service, with a particular talent for developing capable officers. The acknowledgement of his strengths, coming from someone who had witnessed his weaknesses so directly, seemed to complete some unspoken circuit between them. Admiral Westbrook inclined his head in silent appreciation of the professional courtesy. That brings me to my second purpose in visiting today, Okafor continued. She turned to Lieutenant Esparza, who stood near the back of the group. Lieutenant Dario Esparza, front and center, please." Surprised, Esparza moved forward to stand before the commanders. He came to attention, his posture perfect, but his expression betraying confusion. "Lieutenant Esparza," Fleet Commander Okafor began formally, "your actions during the Prosperity Star operation demonstrated exceptional judgment, initiative, and dedication to duty. Your quick implementation of critical security protocols directly contributed to the operation's success." She produced a small box from her pocket. "By authority of the Secretary of the Navy, I am pleased to present you with the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal for your actions." The room fell silent as she opened the box to reveal the medal within. Admiral Westbrook stepped forward. "I fully endorse this commendation," he said. "Lieutenant Esparza exemplifies the qualities we seek to develop in all our officers." As Fleet Commander Okafor pinned the medal to Esparza's uniform, the significance of the moment extended beyond the individual recognition. For the junior officers watching, it represented a visible connection between their daily duties and the larger operations that shape national security, often invisible to those who performed the essential groundwork. "Thank you, Commander," Esparza said, his voice steady despite his evident surprise. "I was simply doing my duty." "The best commendations are always for people who were simply doing their duty, Lieutenant," Okafor replied. "It's not the extraordinary circumstances that reveal character, but how we perform our ordinary responsibilities." With the formal presentations complete, the gathering transitioned to a more casual interaction. Officers approached Fleet Commander Okafor with professional questions, seeking her insights on operational matters. Unlike their previous encounter, where her authority had emerged as a shocking revelation, today they engaged with her directly, respectful of her rank but comfortable in her presence. Admiral Westbrook observed this transformation with thoughtful attention. Lieutenant Esparza, still processing his unexpected recognition, found himself beside the Admiral. "Congratulations, Lieutenant," Westbrook said. "Well deserved." "Thank you, sir. It was unexpected." The best recognitions usually are. Westbrook watched Fleet Commander Okafor, speaking with a group of junior officers. "She has a talent for seeing potential where others might miss it." "Yes, sir. She seems to notice things others don't." "A critical quality in leadership," the Admiral agreed. "One I've been reminded to cultivate more intentionally." Across the room, Rear Admiral Collins joined their conversation. "A successful day all around, I'd say." "Indeed, sir," Westbrook replied. "The base has made significant progress." Collins lowered his voice slightly. "James, I've known you for 20 years. I've never seen your command operate more effectively than it does now. Whatever lessons you took from the commander's visit, they've served you well." Before Westbrook could respond, Fleet Commander Okafor approached their group. "Gentlemen, I'm afraid I need to depart. Operational matters require my attention elsewhere." "Of course, Commander," Rear Admiral Collins said. "Your visit has been illuminating as always." "Admiral Westbrook," she continued, "I've left a complete assessment report with your staff. There are several recommendations for further enhancements, but they're suggestions rather than directives. Your command is functioning at exceptional levels." "Thank you, Commander. Your insights are always valuable." As they walked toward the exit, Admiral Westbrook fell into step beside her. "Commander, if I may ask a personal question?" "Of course." "That first day, when I questioned your role and rank so publicly, why didn't you correct me immediately? You had every right and authority to do so." Fleet Commander Okafor considered the question thoughtfully. "In my experience, Admiral, telling someone they're wrong rarely changes their mind. Allowing them to discover it themselves often leads to more meaningful transformation." "A risky approach," he observed. "I might have continued my theatrical performance indefinitely." "I doubt that," she replied. "You're too good an officer not to recognize truth when it presents itself. Your record shows consistent adaptation to changing circumstances throughout your career." The subtle reframing of his behavior as adaptation rather than humiliation offered a professional dignity that Westbrook clearly appreciated. "Besides," she added with the hint of a smile, "sometimes the most effective demonstration of authority is knowing you don't need to assert it." They reached the base entrance where her transport waited. "I look forward to our continued collaboration, Admiral. Your base plays a vital role in our regional security architecture." "The feeling is mutual, Commander. Your operational insights have been invaluable." She offered her hand, which he shook with genuine respect. "Until next time, Admiral. Fair winds and following seas, Commander." As Fleet Commander Okafor departed, Admiral Westbrook returned to find Lieutenant Esparza coordinating the conclusion of the day's inspection activities. "Lieutenant, once you've finished here, please join me in my office." "Yes, sir." An hour later, Esparza reported as requested. Admiral Westbrook sat, reviewing Fleet Commander Okafor's assessment report. "Lieutenant, I've been considering your performance over the past 3 weeks. Your handling of the security protocols during the Prosperity Star operation was exemplary, as was your coordination of the subsequent operational improvements." "Thank you, sir." Westbrook set aside the report. "I'm recommending you for early promotion to Lieutenant Commander. Your file will go before the next selection board with my personal endorsement." Esparza straightened in surprise. "Sir, I'm honored, but my time and grade is well below the normal requirement for consideration. Fleet Commander Okafor made a similar observation about your potential. Her assessment carries significant weight, as does your performance during a critical operation. The recommendation has already been approved by Rear Admiral Collins." "I don't know what to say, sir." "Say you'll continue to develop as an officer who understands that effective leadership isn't about rank or decoration, but about impact and judgment." "I will, sir. Thank you." "Good." Westbrook leaned back in his chair. "The commander's visit 3 weeks ago was illuminating for all of us. A necessary recalibration of priorities and perspectives." Esparza nodded. "It changed how many of the junior officers view leadership, sir. Watching someone command respect through competence rather than intimidation was educational." "Indeed." The Admiral's expression turned reflective. "I built my career on a particular leadership style. Theatrical, as the commander diplomatically put it. Effective in its way, but perhaps not optimal for developing the next generation of naval leaders." He gestured to the commendation document Fleet Commander Okafor had presented earlier. "This recognition isn't just for the Prosperity Star operation. It's for the operational improvements implemented after her visit. The cultural shift in command philosophy. The changes have been significant, sir." "And necessary," Westbrook acknowledged. "The nature of naval operations is evolving. The leaders we need for tomorrow's challenges may not fit traditional models." He rose and moved to the window, looking out over the base where officers and sailors went about their duties with renewed purpose. "Lieutenant, what was your most valuable takeaway from the commander's visit?" Esparza considered the question carefully. "That authority and power aren't the same thing, sir. One is conferred by rank and position. The other is earned through competence and character." Westbrook nodded approvingly. "Well said. Dismissed, Lieutenant, or should I say Lieutenant Commander?" "Not quite yet, sir," Esparza smiled, "but I'll work to earn that promotion." "I've no doubt you will." 6 months later, Lieutenant Commander Esparza supervised preparations for the quarterly readiness inspection. The procedures were familiar, but the atmosphere remained transformed. Junior officers worked with confident efficiency rather than anxious precision. Senior officers provided clear guidance rather than vague expectations backed by intimidation. As he reviewed the final arrangements, a newly arrived ensign approached him. "Sir, is it true that Admiral Westbrook used to be different before Fleet Commander Okafor's visit?" Esparza looked up from his checklist. "Different how, Ensign?" "Some of the officers who've been here longer say he was more theatrical, more focused on appearance than substance." "The Admiral has always been an effective commander," Esparza replied diplomatically. "But leadership styles evolve as circumstances change. The best officers adapt their approaches to meet current needs." "And Fleet Commander Okafor? The stories about her seem almost mythical at this point." Esparza smiled slightly. "Commander Okafor is a remarkable officer. But the most important thing to understand about her isn't her rank or her classified operations. It's her approach to leadership itself." "What do you mean, sir?" "She demonstrates that true authority doesn't require constant assertion, that the most effective power is often the quietest, and that leadership is measured not by how loudly you speak, but by the impact of your actions." The ensign nodded thoughtfully. "I wish I'd been here to see it, sir." "You're seeing the results every day," Esparza assured him, "in how this command operates now, in the standards we maintain not because we fear inspection, but because we understand their purpose." He straightened a chair that was already perfectly aligned, a habit from his lieutenant days that persisted despite the cultural shift. The most valuable lesson from Commander Okafor wasn't about rank or protocol. It was about recognizing that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one who doesn't need to prove it. Across the base, Admiral Westbrook stood in his office reviewing the latest operational assessment from Pacific Command. The report highlighted North Island as a model of efficiency and effectiveness, with specific commendation for the command culture that balanced accountability with initiative. His aide entered with a secure message. "Sir, communication from Fleet Commander Okafor's office." Westbrook accepted the document, reading it with interest. "They're requesting our support for an upcoming joint operation, specifically asking for Lieutenant Commander Esparza to serve as liaison officer. Will you approve, sir?" The Admiral smiled slightly. "Of course, the commander has an eye for talent, and Esparza has earned the opportunity." Later that day, Admiral Westbrook found Esparza in the operations center. "Lieutenant Commander, congratulations. You've been requested for a special assignment with Fleet Commander Okafor's joint operations team." Esparza's expression registered surprise, followed by professional interest. "Thank you, sir. May I ask the nature of the assignment?" "Classified, naturally, but knowing the commander, it will be both challenging and consequential." Westbrook handed him the official orders. "You report next week. Her aide will provide the details." Esparza accepted the orders. "I'm honored by the selection, sir." "You earned it," Westbrook said simply. "Remember what you've learned here about effective leadership. It will serve you well under Commander Okafor's guidance." "I will, sir." As Esparza departed with his new orders, Admiral Westbrook reflected on the transformation that had occurred in his command. What had begun as a moment of professional humiliation had evolved into a catalyst for meaningful change, not just in operational procedures, but in the fundamental approach to leadership itself. The quarterly inspection would proceed tomorrow, but without the theatrical performance that had once been his trademark. Instead, it would focus on substance over appearance, on developing officers who understood the difference between rank and authority, between commanding attention and earning respect. He thought of Fleet Commander Okafor, likely engaged in another classified operation somewhere across the globe, quietly changing the course of events without public recognition or acclaim. The memory of their first encounter, once a source of discomfort, now represented a turning point in his own leadership journey. In the briefing room, junior officers continued preparations for the next day's inspection, their movements purposeful rather than anxious. The chairs stood in perfect rows, but now they represented order in service of function, not appearance for its own sake. The operational briefings focused on genuine capabilities and limitations, not carefully curated impressions designed to please superiors. Admiral Westbrook surveyed this transformed domain with satisfaction. The most meaningful victories in leadership weren't won through intimidation or theatrical display, but through the quiet cultivation of competence and character. Fleet Commander Okafor had demonstrated that truth through her actions rather than her words, changing his command more profoundly in a single morning than years of traditional inspections ever could. Sometimes the most powerful lessons come from unexpected teachers. When have you witnessed quiet competence speak louder than assertive authority? Share your story in the comments and subscribe for more narratives exploring the true nature of leadership and the quiet power of earned respect.